The arrival of a sleek private jet on a humid Manila morning sent quiet ripples through airport operations long before anyone understood its purpose. Such aircraft usually signaled high-level diplomacy or discreet corporate travel, not personal missions. Ground staff speculated about government officials or secret negotiations, unaware that this flight had been dispatched for a single individual with no public profile and no wealth to her name. The jet had crossed continents not to secure a deal or attend a summit, but to reach a Filipino nurse whose name was unknown outside hospital corridors. That contrast alone revealed how unusual the situation was. In a world where power typically moved for profit or influence, this journey hinted at a different motivation entirely. The story behind the flight was rooted not in contracts or strategy, but in quiet human connection, formed far from boardrooms and headlines. What made this situation even more striking was that the person at the center of it had never sought attention or reward. She had lived most of her adult life in anonymity, believing her sacrifices were ordinary and expected. Yet events were already in motion that would pull her into a story far larger than herself. Anna's life followed a pattern familiar to millions of overseas Filipino workers. For more than a decade, she worked long hospital shifts in the United States, often during nights and holidays when families gathered elsewhere. Her profession demanded patience and emotional endurance, yet she carried those burdens quietly, sending most of her earnings back home to support her parents and siblings. She lived modestly, rarely spending on herself, and avoided drawing attention at work. Colleagues recognized her reliability, but few knew the full extent of her sacrifices. To Anna, this was simply responsibility, a role she accepted without complaint. She believed dignity came from doing one's job well, regardless of recognition. Outside the hospital, her life was equally unremarkable. A small apartment, limited social circles, and routine days shaped by duty. She never imagined that her consistency, rather than any dramatic act, would become the reason her life changed. Her worldview was shaped by humility, reinforced by years of service where appreciation was rare and invisibility common. That mindset would soon collide with circumstances beyond anything she had envisioned, revealing how unseen acts of compassion can resonate far beyond their original moment. Everything shifted during a tense night shift marked by unusual security and hushed conversations among staff. A new patient had been admitted under strict confidentiality, identified only by an alias. His presence altered the hospital's atmosphere, but to Anna, he appeared no different from countless others she had cared for before. He was visibly ill-guarded and clearly accustomed to privacy, yet he asked for nothing beyond basic respect. Assigned as his primary nurse, Anna approached him with the same calm professionalism she offered every patient. She explained procedures carefully, monitored his condition closely, and adjusted her pace to ease his discomfort. She did not probe his identity or respond to the subtle signs of influence surrounding him. Instead, she treated him as a human being navigating fear and pain. That choice, simple as it seemed, was significant. Many patients experience care filtered through assumptions, status, or urgency. Anna's approach stripped all of that away. In doing so, she created an environment of trust that allowed the patient to feel safe at a moment when vulnerability was unavoidable. Neither of them realized that this ordinary interaction was laying the foundation for an extraordinary outcome. As days passed, the patient's condition grew unstable, testing the hospital's systems and the resolve of its staff. During one critical episode, alarms filled the room and decisions had to be made within seconds. In the midst of confusion, Anna noticed a subtle change others overlooked. Drawing on experience and instinct, she acted quickly, adjusting equipment and communicating crucial information to the medical team. Her composure helped anchor the response, preventing panic from escalating. Later, doctors acknowledged that her actions had altered the outcome of that night. Yet Anna dismissed any praise, attributing success to teamwork and faith rather than personal skill. For the patient, however, the impact was deeply personal. He had faced mortality before, but rarely with such clarity. Recovery gave him time to reflect, and he began to see Anna not just as a caregiver, but as a reminder of sincerity he felt had been missing from his life. Their conversations remained simple, touching on family, purpose, and the quiet costs of choosing service over self-interest. Through those exchanges, a bond formed that transcended professional boundaries, rooted in shared vulnerability rather than status. When the patient was finally discharged, there was no dramatic farewell. He thanked Anna sincerely, shook her hand, and left without revealing his identity. The hospital returned to its routines, and Anna resumed her shifts, unaware that she had left a lasting impression on someone accustomed to being surrounded by power. Months later, her contract ended and she returned to the Philippines quietly, believing that chapter of her life had closed. Back home, she adjusted to familiar rhythms, reconnecting with family and embracing a slower pace. The memory of the patient faded into the background of countless others she had helped. Then an unexpected call disrupted that calm. Her former hospital requested an urgent meeting, offering no explanation. During the conversation, administrators revealed the truth about the patient's identity. A billionaire investor whose influence extended into governments and global markets. More astonishing was his request. He wanted Anna brought back to the United States immediately, not through commercial travel, but aboard his private jet. The reason was not professional obligation or publicity. It was gratitude, expressed in a way that matched the scale of his resources. The announcement left Anna disoriented. She struggled to understand why such measures were necessary for someone like her. Doubt crept in, accompanied by fear of misunderstanding or misplaced expectations. Yet the arrangements proceeded with precision, and within days the jet arrived in Manila. Observers watched as Anna, dressed simply, boarded an aircraft associated with wealth beyond imagination. The journey was surreal, marked by courtesy and quiet respect rather than extravagance. Upon arrival, she was escorted to a private estate where she finally came face to face with the man she had once cared for under fluorescent hospital lights. Now healthy and composed, he greeted her not as a subordinate, but as an equal. In front of family and advisors, he acknowledged the role she played in his survival. His words emphasized not her technical skill alone, but her humanity during a moment when he felt reduced to vulnerability. That distinction mattered. For him, survival had come with a moral awakening, prompting him to reconsider how power and gratitude should be expressed. Bringing Anna, there was his way of closing a circle he felt remained incomplete. The reason behind the private jet soon became clear. The billionaire explained that during his illness, stripped of influence and anonymity, Anna's kindness had grounded him. She treated him with dignity without knowing who he was, offering compassion without expectation. That experience contrasted sharply with interactions driven by status or advantage. He believed such integrity deserved recognition beyond words. His response was not transactional but symbolic, reflecting his belief that character should be rewarded as much as achievement. He offered honest security for her family, educational support for her siblings, and opportunities she had never imagined. The gestures were generous, yet what stood out was her reaction. Overwhelmed, she hesitated, expressing concern for other nurses who labored under similar conditions. Her request shifted the focus away from herself, prompting broader commitments. Scholarships, hospital donations, and support programs followed, extending the impact of one encounter into many lives. The story eventually became public, not because Anna sought attention, but because its message resonated widely. It challenged assumptions about power, worth, and recognition, revealing how quiet service can influence even the most powerful individuals. Public reaction was swift and emotional. Many questioned why a billionaire would go to such lengths for a nurse, while others saw the story as affirmation of values often overlooked. For Filipino workers abroad, it symbolized long overdue acknowledgement of sacrifices made in silence. The narrative spread because it contrasted sharply with common portrayals of wealth and influence. Instead of domination or self-interest, it highlighted humility and gratitude. Analysts noted that the billionaire's response aligned with a growing recognition that leadership is measured not only by success, but by ethical awareness. Anna's role in that transformation was unintentional yet profound. She had not aimed to inspire change, only to fulfill her duty with compassion. That authenticity gave her actions credibility no stage gesture could replicate. The private jet became a symbol, not of extravagance, but of the distance kindness can travel when acknowledged. It demonstrated that even in systems driven by hierarchy, genuine human connection retains the power to disrupt expectations. The focus gradually shifted from the spectacle of the flight to the principles it represented, sparking conversations about respect, labor, and unseen contributions worldwide. Within the Philippines, the story carried additional weight. Nurses and overseas workers saw their experiences reflected in Anna's journey, validating years of endurance often dismissed as routine. Her insistence on extending benefits to others reinforced communal values deeply rooted in Filipino culture. Rather than isolating success, she transformed it into shared opportunity. Educational initiatives launched in her name aimed to empower future healthcare workers, addressing systemic challenges through sustained support. Observers noted that this outcome aligned closely with her original motivations for working abroad. Not personal enrichment, but collective uplift. The billionaire's involvement added visibility and resources, but the guiding principle remained service. Media discussions highlighted how global systems depend on individuals whose labor sustains institutions without recognition. Anna's story forced a reconsideration of who truly holds societies together. It also illustrated how ethical responses from those in power can create ripple effects beyond immediate circles. By choosing gratitude over discretion, the billionaire reframed his influence, demonstrating that acknowledgement of humanity can coexist with immense wealth. This alignment between values and action amplified the story's impact, ensuring it resonated beyond headlines. As time passed, Anna returned to a life that, while transformed, remained grounded. She continued working in healthcare, now with greater stability and broader reach. Her family's security eased long-standing anxieties, allowing them to focus on growth rather than survival. Yet she remained cautious about public attention, preferring to let initiatives speak for themselves. Those who interacted with her noted that her demeanor had not changed. She still approached people with the same patience and humility that defined her earlier years. The billionaire maintained involvement, ensuring commitments were honored without turning them into spectacles. Their relationship settled into mutual respect rather than dependency. For Anna, the experience reinforced her belief that integrity carries its own momentum. She often reflected on how close she had come to remaining invisible and how easily her actions could have gone unnoticed. That awareness fueled her advocacy for nurses and overseas workers, emphasizing the importance of systems that recognize contribution regardless of status. The private jet, once a shocking image, faded into the background as tangible outcomes took center stage, shaping lives in lasting ways. The broader implications of the story extended into discussions about healthcare labor worldwide. Nurses are often positioned at the intersection of technical expertise and emotional support, yet their role is frequently undervalued. Anna's experience highlighted the critical impact of attentive care, particularly in moments of crisis. Experts noted that outcomes in healthcare are influenced not only by technology and protocols, but by trust between patient and caregiver. That trust is built through empathy, communication, and presence, qualities Anna embodied instinctively. Her recognition underscored a growing call to elevate caregiving professions and address burnout caused by systemic neglect. Institutions began referencing the story in training contexts, framing it as evidence of how professionalism and compassion intersect. The billionaire's acknowledgement served as an unusual endorsement, bridging worlds rarely connected so personally. It suggested that those accustomed to power are not immune to vulnerability, and that meaningful care can reshape perspectives regardless of status. By centering the narrative on dignity rather than heroism, the story avoided sentimentality while preserving its emotional weight, allowing it to inform practical conversations about reform and respect. International audiences interpreted the event through their own cultural lenses. In some contexts, it was seen as an inspiring anomaly. In others, a reminder of inequities that persist across borders. Yet a common thread emerged: admiration for consistency of character. Anna's actions were not extraordinary in isolation, but remarkable in their steadiness. She did not change her behavior based on circumstance, a trait that resonated with people fatigued by performative gestures. The billionaire's response, while dramatic, was rooted in that authenticity. Commentators emphasized that the true shock lay not in the private jet, but in the values it represented. The story invited reflection on how societies measure worth and reward. It challenged assumptions that impact requires visibility or ambition. Instead, it suggested that sustained kindness, practiced without expectation, can influence outcomes in unpredictable ways. That message gained traction in professional and academic circles, prompting renewed interest in ethical leadership models that prioritize human connection. The narrative's endurance stemmed from its refusal to simplify complexity, acknowledging both structural challenges and individual agency. For Filipino communities abroad, the story became a touchstone, circulating through conversations about migration and sacrifice. It validated experiences often framed solely in economic terms, reminding listeners that emotional labor carries equal weight. Anna's journey illustrated how identity and profession intertwine, shaping perceptions across cultures. Her refusal to center herself reinforced collective pride, emphasizing shared resilience rather than individual triumph. Organizations supporting overseas workers referenced the case in advocacy efforts, highlighting the need for systemic protections and recognition. Meanwhile, the Billionaires' initiatives continued quietly, focusing on sustainability rather than publicity. Observers noted that his approach mirrored Anna's values, suggesting mutual influence rather than one-sided generosity. This alignment lent credibility to the efforts, distinguishing them from short-term philanthropy. The story's longevity was sustained by tangible outcomes rather than symbolism alone. Each scholarship awarded and program launched reinforced its relevance, transforming a moment of gratitude into an ongoing process. In that sense, the private jet was merely the catalyst for a broader shift, one that continued unfolding long after initial attention faded. Over time, the narrative evolved from shock to reflection. People no longer asked why a billionaire would act this way, but why such recognition was so rare. The question redirected focus toward systemic gaps that allow essential workers to remain unseen. Anna's example served as a reminder that acknowledgement does not require extraordinary resources, only awareness and intention. Her story encouraged individuals and institutions alike to examine how they respond to those who serve them quietly. In educational settings, it became a case study in ethical reciprocity, illustrating how gratitude can be expressed responsibly. The absence of dramatization strengthened its credibility, allowing audiences to engage without skepticism. The billionaire's willingness to publicly credit a nurse also disrupted traditional narratives of heroism, redistributing attention toward caregiving roles. This recalibration resonated during a period when global health systems faced unprecedented strain. By highlighting relational ethics rather than transactional exchanges, the story offered a framework for reimagining how societies value service. Its influence persisted not because it promised transformation, but because it demonstrated possibility grounded in reality. In the end, the journey of a private jet across oceans symbolized more than wealth in motion. It represented a rare convergence of power and humility, prompted by a moment of genuine care. Anna's story did not redefine success through riches, but through integrity sustained over years of quiet labor. The billionaire's response, though extraordinary in scale, underscored a simple truth. Recognition carries meaning when it honors humanity rather than status. Their encounter illustrated how unseen actions can echo far beyond their original context, shaping lives and institutions alike. The outcome was not a fairy tale, but a reminder that ethical choices accumulate impact over time. Anna remained a nurse, committed to service, while the benefits extended outward to families and communities who shared her journey. The private jet eventually departed, but its significance endured through lasting commitments and changed perspectives. In a world often driven by visibility and power, this story affirmed that dignity, practiced consistently, still has the power to move even the most influential forces.